Trigger warning. This show includes depictions of the use of a straitjacket. This is just for cinematic effect. I was never in a physical straitjacket while detained. The mental straitjacket of the services restricts all it touches. It also contains film of smoking and drinking. While these activities are negative, they are relevant to the story. There is also some mild nudity in the form of artistic modelling pictures. The show will touch on many subjects that possibly deserve a trigger warning. If you feel the need to leave, feel free to take it out on me in the reviews, but please leave quietly so as not to disturb it for the rest. I hope, however, that you enjoy the show. It is not light, but I believe it will be enlightening. Schrödinger devised an experiment in which a cat may be considered simultaneously both alive and dead, while it is unobserved in a closed box, as a result of its fate being linked to a random subatomic event that may or may not occur. Similarly, being under the mental health services feels like you are expected to be both well and ill at the same time. One cannot be both. So which is it? Am I ill or am I well? Let's open the lid. Mental health interventions work for a lot of people. There are countless stories on the theme of I was a mess and then I got help. Most of these, though, are not from people who have experienced acute inpatient mental health care. For me, I was fine and then I got help thrust upon me and my life unraveled. This talk and experiences are my own, though I know I am not the only one who feels them. The stories of the people the mental health services fail are lost because they are too often dead, too traumatized or too zombified to talk of their pain. When neurodiversity is front and center, mental illness is still shrouded in taboo. Of course I knew I was insane. It ever was the way. But never did I mean to find so much anger, nor such pain. But love hurts, planes, flies, lullabies. Your love destroyed my soul. And now I need my medicine because in a world of untold lies, truth hurts, judgment dies. Deranged and random, messed up thoughts. 3 a.m. waffling, trying. Oh, the loss. For being under the mental health services and being sectioned has, for me, been to experience loss. A loss of career opportunities, a loss of social ease, a loss of freedom, and at times I have feared a loss of my sanity. My memory indeed may never be the same again. A loss that thankfully in the last 3 years is being repaid by experiences like this, where I can use my voice to feed back, in the hope that in the future no one in need of help will have to experience what I experienced. Even entering the system with educated adult eyes at the age of 35, I was personally so horrified by what I saw that I wanted to go to the press and expose the trauma I experienced, which would go on to destabilize me for 7 years. While I would not wish those last 7 years on anyone, in many ways I am pleased that if they had to happen to someone, they happened to me. I'd lived a very sheltered life up until I was first sectioned, which is the term for being forcibly taken to a mental ward. My experiences since have given me access to segments of society that I never knew existed, and an understanding of trauma and addiction that I never wanted, but it has increased my knowledge and human understanding beyond measure. What bothers me about my experiences with the mental health services is that they have made my stability worse. If I felt that my experiences were unique, I would not be standing here talking to you now. I have been told before to get over it, because it is not just me. It is precisely because it is not just me that it is important to speak out. Every year, we hear about failings and suicides in wards. A mental ward should be a place of respite. One suicide in a mental ward a year is too many, and yet the statistics are closer to several hundred. And this does not include the most dangerous time, which is known to be shortly after release. I am an eternal optimist who loves life, but at times I have come too close to joining those statistics. Life under surfaces can feel like a life sentence, like you are never going to be allowed to recover and live a normal life. And death can seem preferable to lifelong dependence on a system you come to need but never trust. I've been sectioned 7 times, you know.
How many suicide attempts?
None. I've been sectioned for talking to God, not because I am depressed.
Still a lot of times, though.
Yeah. But once you're known to the services, it really isn't. I have been sectioned 7 times, and it has changed me in nearly all aspects of my life. I will be generous and say that for many people, they come into the services at a time when their life is already unraveled, and being changed to a new person could maybe bring relief. But I liked old me, and realizing that I could never be that person again took a lot to get my head around. In many ways, I was an exception within the mental health services when I was first sectioned. I had no drug or alcohol problem. I wasn't homeless, and other than one night in the cells for drunk and disorderly, I had never had any trouble with the police. However, over the years, I have become as unraveled as anyone in the services. So when I speak for myself, I also speak for them. Whilst there are no end of people ready to talk about their autism and ADHD, bipolar and schizophrenia are still considered fearful. I myself have autism and ADHD, and I believe these affect me more than the bipolar diagnosis that I am also labelled with. I never thought a bipolar diagnosis. It was thrust upon me, and for years I hated it. I didn't recognize myself in the descriptions. I still don't from my youth, but I do now. Now I have all the symptoms of bipolar. I have days when I start writing suicide notes and others where I think I am the literal voice of God. And these can be just hours apart. Behavior that has got more, not less, extreme over the years, was under the watchful eyes of the services. Poppy is a stage name. My real name is Robin. I started using the name Poppy when I took up modelling as a hobby back in circa 2013. A hobby I started to get over a crippling fear of having my photo taken, which was starting to affect my social life, where I would duck out of any social situation the moment someone got a camera out. A hobby I would grow to love, and which I thought could maybe become a sideline profession. And before I was sectioned, and I have hardly touched since. The writing, which is my main pastime these days, started as a self-therapy, to get the thoughts out of my head and onto paper, a healthy release of my emotions. What has been most striking from my time in the wards is that most people there have struck me as unfortunate and not dangerous. I fear there are many people in the wards who are simply neurodivergent and are as scared and confused as I was, knowing that they have never hurt anything, and yet something about their character scares people so much that the world feels they need to be detained. It's not fair when you blame me for the hurt in your life. It's not fair when you blame me for your troubles and strife. It's not right when you tell me I must be polite, then start screaming in my face and disregard my fright. It's not right that I'm in here. I always worked so hard. It's not right that I'm here while you hold all the cards. For it's you who have hurt me. Some mistakes are okay, but promise me now you won't take my liberty away. I love you, I hate you, there's so much to say. But in here I must die. Take my liberty away. I had always known that my brain was somewhat different to those around me. The friendships and petty squabbles of childhood perplexed me. And while at primary school I was perfectly averagely popular, as I transitioned to secondary, I became more an outsider. I self-diagnosed as autistic during my master's degree at the age of 24, after a throwaway comment from my mother got me researching the subject. The more I read, the more I recognized myself in the descriptions. I never sought a formal diagnosis or indeed really told anyone of my suspicions, because by that age it didn't seem like a problem that was negatively affecting my life. Sure, I never really had a group of friends, but I had friends and good ones. My brain had already awarded me the physics prize at school, a first in my undergrad in planetary science from UCL, and ease of transition into an engineering master's. Back then and to this day, I could not fathom how an intense interest in subjects and difficulty lying could be considered negative traits, and not attributes that society should be aspiring to. Small talk has never advanced society. Abject focus and moral fortitude is what pushes us forward. I had been moderately depressed since I was 12 years old. I distinctly remember the day that the childhood joy drained from me and was replaced by melancholy and a virtual bully on my shoulder. When I was 17, my friends and I were discussing what we wanted to be when we were older. Most were talking about being lawyers or bankers or doctors. It was that sort of school. My response was that I simply wanted to be happy. As the years progressed, I pushed myself into social situations. My comfort around others increased and my self-loathing lessened. I got married, played pool and travelled extensively. My career progressed, not as rapidly as some, but adequately. And after my separation from my husband, I finally managed to throw off the binds of my insecurities. Leaving my husband whilst on the border of suicide was a huge decision. Taken 2 days after I had cut myself for the first time in 3 years. It was a decision I made entirely for myself. Maybe the first time in my adult life I had ever made a major decision without clearing it with others first. I felt a newfound confidence, a belief in my place in society, and I felt like I had the world at my feet. I had always felt I had the capacity in me to end up dead under a bridge with a needle in my arm. It was why I avoided drugs for so long. Now I found that that very same mind had the potential to give me any life I dreamt of. All I had to do was stop masking the autism of my intellect, embrace it, and apply it. Big mistake. Big, huge mistake. I didn't want to weave a web. I didn't want to save the world. I didn't want to scream and shout or turn my body inside out. I wanted just the quiet life, to have a job and be a wife, to maybe have a kid or two, spend my life alone with you. But life is strange, and sticks and stones, despite them, words will break your bones. But words can change your life around and put your feet back on the ground. And words, with nothing left to lose. You have a life. You live. You choose. And now I choose my soul to bear. At least I'll try. At least I care. My first sectioning was a farce. Something that should never have happened. If you want to know exactly what happened, I direct you to my previous show, Sectioned, which is on YouTube by Radcliffe. In essence, it was a simple row with my parents, with whom I'd always had a close but difficult relationship. It was stupid. Maybe the type of thing you would laugh about, but the 3 nights I spent in the ward changed me. And when I came out, my job, which I loved, which I had a time-limited proposal for, wouldn't let me come back, insisting that I was ill and needed rest. When you, or at least I, am processing pain, being alone with my thoughts can be the worst. A focus, any focus, something to take your mind off it. Something that allows me to build new memories, to forget the trauma is needed. The focus of the services, however, is always to stop. I have had vast quantities of time off work the last few years. Somehow I have managed to remain employed, though it has not been easy nor certain for the future. I have met people who have held jobs from all walks of life before their involvement in the services, and not one person, other than myself, who is still working. My first sectioning was a farce. If they had said sorry and had a word with the office to make them let me go back, it would have been nothing more than a bizarre story to tell over pub drinks. As it is a bizarre story worthy of telling the world, and I will try to use it to illustrate the tweaks I think can make the system a whole lot better. My first point, and this is an important one, is about timing. 2 days before I was sectioned, I was arrested for drunk and disorderly. I was slightly drunk. I was very disorderly. Kicking off in the pub because I thought the guy I'd forgotten I had a date with had the capacity to rape me, and my out-of-control sex drive that I was experiencing would allow it to happen. Confusing, bizarre. Without any drugs, I hadn't slept for 4 days. If the mental health services had been called on me that day, it would have made sense. I may even have been pleased to see them. I certainly wanted to talk to someone. It had been a really weird few days, an insight into how dangerous the world can be for mentally unstable women, and I was freaked. But they didn't call them on me that day, and I processed my fear by screaming my lungs out to the invisible police behind the cell walls. It worked. I released everything and felt a calmness inside me. As I left, the second lieutenant said to me, "Don't worry. A lot of people who go on to do amazing things have records for drunk and disorderly." I felt seen and supported. Time to stop drinking, buckle down, and do those amazing things. I was sectioned 2 days later. Actions that led me to the police cell. The doctors who assessed me after a 20-hour wait in A&E were focused on what happened then, even though it was past and I had already paid for it. They spent more time talking to my worried parents than to me. Yes, the row with my parents had been spectacular, but they were the ones in the wrong. I cannot blame them for being worried. They are kind and caring, cautious people. But I can't help but think how different all our lives would be if on that fateful day the doctors had told them that I was fine and to calm down. I trusted you. You brought me up, but troubles dogged your life. So I would never bother you with my own grief and strife. I hid my fire and passions, putting your needs first. But life and pain and suffering made my heart about to burst. And then one day, I needed you to help rebuild my life. But rather than encourage me, you raised the chopping knife. I'd always been a good girl. You loved that I was kind. But seeing my ambition drove you out your fucking mind. I didn't mean to scare you. You'd never seen the flame. No wonder you were worried, just history to blame. But honestly, how could you? I didn't ask for much. Just a little understanding and a parent's tender touch. I do not blame you, parents. I know you truly care. But nothing's ever hurt as much as that you did there. It wasn't all your fault, though. You never could have known the sexism of mental health that chills me to the bone. It is a constant within the acute services that the voices of those around you are given more credence than your own. I told the doctors at the assessment that I was still a bit unstable. I was experiencing what felt like true confidence for the first time in my life, and it was taking a little getting used to. I told them I was handling it with books and cigarettes, and that I would come to any meeting they cared to arrange, but that it was a very important week for me, and I had a proposal to save my company thousands, hundreds of thousands of pounds. My word meant nothing. My work proposal on my section notes, the projection isn't on, was classed as an idea of grandeur. And, sorry about this, idea of grandeur. My parents concerned that they couldn't control me at home was one of the major factors securing my detention. I was 35 years old and had been living independently since I was 18. Why were they trying to control me at home? Maybe my career plans were a bit grandiose, but to this day I cannot see how believing I could build a database was in any way a danger to anyone. Mania itself is not bad. Mania is incredibly productive if controlled and channeled. Indeed, many people report being the happiest they've ever been in their pre-manic state. I would like to state that it is not the level of mental elation that is the problem, but what you intend to do with it. Being able to dream is part of what makes us human, and every major invention started life as somebody's crazy idea. I did not go to the hospital willingly. I ran to my parents' car and begged them to take me away with them. They did not. I was physically manhandled into the ambulance by 3 burly staff members, all the while screaming and begging, while a doctor looked on with tears in her eyes. She just stood there crying, while I was begging and dying. She just stood there crying while my inner soul was torn. She just stood there crying while I was begging and dying. She just stood there crying, a voyeur of pain. The transfer to the ward was relatively painless. The 2 ambulance staff with me were lovely, and calmed me while I panicked and tried to reach out for help. I posted on Facebook something along the lines of, "My parents are getting me sectioned, help." And all I got in return was a whole load of comments saying hugs. All except for one friend who did try and talk to the ward. The ambulance allowed me to stop on the way to buy snacks, and they allowed me to stand outside the ward and have a cigarette to calm my nerves before going in, something that was appreciated and denied to most people. One day in the ward I saw a new woman come in. She was hysterical and physically hurting herself by throwing herself against the metal railings, all the while screaming, "Please, I don't want to hurt myself. I don't want any more bruises. All I want is a cigarette so I can sit in the garden and calm down. Is that too much to ask?" There was a courtyard, 2 meters from where she was standing, and yet no permission to have that one cigarette, a legal human right. Prisoners in open prisons are allowed to smoke in courtyards, yet mental health patients are not. Smoking is bad. We all know that smoking is bad, but most people in mental wards smoke. And for a smoker, a cigarette can ease the agitation growing inside you. Over all my stays, the vast majority of times that the wards have kicked off, and the wards kick off all the time, it is over someone's desire for nicotine. Whether it is a cancelled promised break or simply desperation. I have seen a woman pinned down and sedated for nothing more than refusing to give up a lighter. And yet the time a woman ripped a chunk of hair out of my head, she faced no penalty. This is an important area I feel needs reform in inpatient mental health care. Both the smoking restrictions and more generally fairness and rules. It often feels in wards that the sicker you are, the more you are on the end of inhumane behaviour. And conversely, if you are polite, then you can get away with anything. I have often felt that I have received preferential treatment to people without my resources. I had been caught smoking and with lighters many times, but I could afford to buy more, so I would give them up easily, and was never punished with a cancelled leave the people that resisted were. The wards need to prepare you for a transition back to the outside world, and hence their rules should reflect the law of the land. Yet I was able to graffiti my whole room and no one said anything. Emotions, not actions, are policed. But emotions are healthy, and if there is anywhere you should be allowed to let them out, it is in a hospital. There are no set rules for behaviour, and crucially no clear criteria for release. Arriving at a ward is scary. No one greets you. You are just dumped and left to wait. The first thing I would change if I was in charge of the wards is the welcome. You arrive by ambulance, and then you are just left, sometimes for hours, sitting and waiting. I'm like a warrior, poised for battle, sitting, waiting, sitting, thinking, knowing that I might die, weary from the war already fought, thinking this might be the time I don't come back, sitting, waiting, sitting, thinking, ready, planning. It's been so long, it's been so hard, the battle's fought, the battle's lost. The glimmer of hope, here we go, one last push, over the top, fight, upward, stand! Shot down. It is almost always the patients, not the staff, that form the welcome committee. And this is obviously not great. The first person who met me was a very distressed lady who told me how she was shouting at a canal boat owner who was leaking oil into the canal when she was picked up and taken from her home with no ability to get a message to her partner or her dog both of which she feared she had now lost. She told me that the last person who escaped the ward was now dead, and that the only way to get out is to admit you are ill and take the medication. Something that I scoffed at the time, but appears to more often than not be true. They did not give me any meds that first time. The ambulance staff apparently put in a good word for me. But they did in my first ward round, which is the term for your meeting with a psychiatrist, tell me that they could forcibly medicate me, which in my mind I saw as a threat. They also could not, or would not, tell me why I was there. This lack of explanation is another of the major failings in acute mental health care. At the time I was first sectioned, I had never experienced psychosis. The first time my mind tripped was in the ward on that first day. I was scared, so very scared. I had taken to keeping a diary of what I saw, written hurriedly on paper towels and stuffed in the lining of my coat for fear of it being confiscated. On my second day in the ward, I put a post on Facebook trying to track down the woman's partner. It was seen, and apparently you are not allowed to post about patients. This was a rule that no one had told me existed. And for breaking it, I had my phone, my only link to normality, confiscated. Shortly afterwards, I went to my room and collapsed on my bed. I had a thought that I would never be happy again. Thoughts of suicide flashed across my mind. At that exact moment, my push-button shower turned itself on. Scared the living bejesus out of me. I'd never believed in any sort of signs or supernatural, but at that point I half expected there to be an angel waiting for me in the shower, though it was obviously empty. Later I was told that they sometimes run the showers to prevent Legionnaire's disease. If true, you would have thought they would warn the mentally unstable of that. I have experienced psychosis often and extremely since this first day. My second admission came on a day where I believed myself to be controlling the weather, where the hospital I was taken at was built by my mind as I saw it, and where I had relations with an invisible devil. On other occasions, I have felt my phone magically disappear and reappear, believed my Google Doc to be sending me messages, and even gone as far as mistaking body and blood human beings as celestial creatures. And there is barely a day goes past now where I do not wonder about God's hand in my life. Not once has any professional discussed this with me. This is outrageous. Your strange experiences come from somewhere. There must be studies on what people see and hear. Other than my first sectioning, I haven't even seen my section notes, despite repeated requests for access. Apparently, they don't like to show them to people in case it triggers a reaction. I say that no one is triggered by the truth, and part of your job as a psychological professional is to be able to have these tough conversations. The experiences are simply discounted as delusions and no explanation given, but they feel more real than real. People pay good money to take substances that give them experiences akin to what some people like myself experience for free. If they can be triggered by chemical substances, there must be a logical explanation for them. I don't know where they come from, but the point is these experiences are common for a lot of people. And we can only make progress in treating them if we try and understand. Sweeping them under the carpet does not make the experiences fade for the people that experience them. It does not make them less likely to occur again. It just makes the person experiencing them more isolated. An old lady screams out, "I know what I did!" Protector, "I know what I did! I'm in the worst place in the world!" She spots a nurse passing and instantly shuts down and stops. A lady is sat at the end of the corridor screaming, "Just knock me out! I don't want to be in these places anymore! I'm tired of being treated like a fucking guinea pig! I just want to go home! I don't care anymore." Inside the cover of a book is written, "I don't feel safe here. I was tortured at Kingfisher Court." And for myself, oh, why am I still here, Lord? I died so long ago. Why did you make me tread this world, Lord, trapped in death's sorrow? The endless onward grind, Lord, when I've already peaked, that time you took my soul and put me back upon my feet. I walk this world in silence, a pain I can't repress, wishing that death would take me. Let my fake smile rest. My second and subsequent stays were longer, generally 4 weeks, which is the duration of a Section 2 section. One time they upgraded me to a Section 3, which can be up to 6 months, although they let me out a week after the upgrade. For the longest stays, the most prevalent emotion is overwhelming, crushing, boredom. The amount of activities put on varies wildly between wards, with some running groups every day and others maybe a couple of times a week. The activities are good, they are something to do, but they are normally activities that children could do. The art especially allows people to open up and talk whilst focusing on something else. But it is known that mental health and creativity go hand in hand. So push people, encourage them to express, provide canvases and paints, not kids' painting kits and magazines for colleges. The best ward I was in was actually the shabbiest. In most wards, people have individual ensuite rooms, but in this one there were up to 4 people sharing, just divided by a curtain. But it was the best. The craft lady came in every day. There were separate rooms for TV and music, which are bizarrely combined in most wards, so you can't really focus on either. There was this brown, comfy leather sofa, which was the only piece of comfy furniture I've ever seen in a ward. Most wards have plastic chairs so heavy you have to break a sweat to move them. The fear, I assume, being that we might use them as weapons. And there was an actual pool table, which was amazing. The best way to get rid of excess stress. And the cues were never used as weapons. Mental instability does not mean you are violent, and it certainly doesn't mean you have an intellectual delay. Indeed, it is known that intelligence makes you more susceptible to mental health problems, not less. But you are not encouraged in wards, and for the most part there is nothing to do, and what there is infantilizes you. While many stays in mental wards are short, for those that are longer, there should be learning opportunities, and the activities should push and advance people rather than remind you of play school. It seems grossly unfair to me that there are more opportunities for convicts in prison to upskill than patients in mental wards. What surprised me most was the lack of therapy. Not even ad hoc occupational therapists you could talk to. You see a psychiatrist once a week, which is abysmal at the start and possibly overkill 2 years in. In my opinion, you should be seeing them daily until you are settled, with the gaps becoming longer as you head towards release. The services will generally not offer you therapy until you've been stable for at least 6 months, which in my mind is absurd and something that kept me trapped in my trauma. I would have liked therapy when I was in distress. It seems logical that you should be offered it at a time when you need someone to talk to, when your brain is malleable and the trauma or weird psychotic experiences are fresh. Instead, you're expected to process them on your own and then bring them up again only once you have managed stability, at a point where reliving is more likely to destabilize than improve. My therapy directly led into one of my sectionings. My counsellor encouraged me to talk about something I truly didn't care to. I spent a week gearing up to the chat, then during our session he said, now doesn't seem a good time to talk about it. I don't know what happened, but my brain flipped. I don't remember the rest of the session, and I was sectioned 2 days later. Memory blanks being an annoying side effect of my mental health. I've flipped many times during psychiatric appointments. I have stormed out probably as many times as I've sat happily till the end. There is a power disconnect. To the doctor, you are one of many patients, but to the patient, the doctor is their only hope of getting the care they need. And they don't seem to care or listen. You are buffered from psychiatrist to psychiatrist, asked again and again whether you are eating, sleeping, and drinking. There is no nuance, no interest, and the answer to any upset is always more medication. I used to practice what I was going to say in my sessions for weeks beforehand. Sometimes I would drag friends with me because I was too scared to go on my own. And the thought that if my friends spoke for me, the same things that I wanted to say, then maybe they would be given more weight than when I said them myself. Throughout my time, I have felt that all effort by the doctors to understand my experiences has come from my attempt to describe, rather than their attempts to interpret. It feels like if you are not visibly a mess, then saying that you are is ignored. Sometimes you really don't want to talk about it. You don't want to tell these together people all the shit you are doing just to survive. You want them to understand, to pick up on the shaky nerves and recognize the fear and pain. After all, this is apparently their area of expertise. As an example, it took me 3 years, 5 sectionings, and a private diagnosis before they even sent me for an NHS autism assessment. 3 years of being told I didn't understand my own mental health. People who are ill know they are ill. They are scared of what their mind has done in the past. Your job is to ease those fears and offer them a future. I want you to see me as I see me. Repulsive, twisted, dark. I want you to see me as I see me. My dark, convulsing heart. I want you to see me as I see me. You have to see the worst. You have to see the pain that I'm struggling through again. I need you to see me as I see me. A useless, drunken mess who hides behind her illness, who calls the snapping stress. I want you to see me as I see me. See how low I had to go. I want you to see me as I see me, the manifestation of my woe. I need you to see me how I see me. Don't look at me that way. I need you to see me as I see me. Then we can build the day. Being sectioned and being labelled with a diagnosis you did not seek, and that is still considered taboo in society, can feel like a life sentence. There is no way to get a diagnosis overturned. They diagnose on symptoms, not chemistry. Even if those symptoms are gone for years, you are still that diagnosis. Where physical health focuses on rehabilitation and independence, it often feels like mental health aims for long-term dependence. For some people, especially those that have struggled since childhood, lifelong care could be wonderful. But for the majority, all they dream about is independent living and a normal life. A one-size-fits-all approach does not allow for the wonders of human diversity. Let's consider mental health like learning to ride a bike, and medication as stabilizers. You may never have been able to ride the bike, or you may once have been confident and had a great crash and be scared to get back on. You don't go straight to riding a two-wheel cycle. You start with stabilizers. As your confidence grows, you feel the need for the stabilizers less and less. You might be happy with the stabilizers, or you might start to feel they restrict you as you see others around you with the freedom of two wheels. Suppose you get confident enough to take the stabilizers off. You do not do this on your own though, not unless you are a complete idiot. You do it with a team of people around you. People to catch you should you start to wobble, to cheer you on and give you confidence. And if at first you don't succeed, you don't give up forever. You keep the stabilizers as long as you need and then try again. What you do not do is keep the person on stabilizers for months or years after they have been asking to come off. Then agree, tell them how dangerous it is, and leave them alone for 6 months until they come back covered in bruises. See, you never should have tried coming off the stabilizers. This is exactly what they do with meds. As you reduce your meds, they simultaneously reduce the amount of times you see a psychiatrist. First, it is down to once every 3 months, and then as you come off completely, it is once every 6 months and back to your GP. Changing medication is dangerous. The brain works to compensate for the effects of the medication. And you can be screaming at the services that you need support, and it does not come for weeks or months, by which time, and twice for me, it is too late. But to prove to you that you continue to need them, they leave you to navigate the heightened world on your own, till you fall and crash and they can put you back in a wheelchair. You learn to stop pushing, to accept the limitations of stabilizers. Well, most people do. The arrival of the mental health services should be a relief. Hospitals should not be somewhere that you are scared to go to, but somewhere where you can relax, feel safe and gather your strength. It should feel like the cavalry has arrived. Care should be collaborative. After all, we are supposedly all on the same side. Both patient and staff should be aiming for full, productive, healthy lives. Of course, there are people whose mental health makes them a danger. But in all the wards I've been in, the majority of people have seemed gentle and keen to improve. Yet these same people, just like me, are finding themselves interned again and again. There is no recovery, just management. You have to be allowed to let it out, to scream, to shout, to cry. You have to be allowed to dance and think you want to die. You have to be allowed to process it away if you keep it in your heart, and will control you day to day. Yet they will not allow you to process how you will. You have to keep your mouth shut and take the little pill. The care is not a hospital, but more a prison ward, where you're held until your pain is overtaken just by board. For there is no support there. Don't tell me that there is, unless you're already well enough to not be in a tiss. And if you need the hospital, for more than a few times. They'll punish you for being ill with mandatory medical binds. They'll force the meds upon you, not give you counselling. They will not help you tidy, yet control you on a string. For that is what they judge you on: eating, sleep, and drink. Not on what's causing the actions or the thoughts you cannot think. The system is all messed up, is inside out and wrong. The wards should be a sanctuary, not a hell to escape from. There are people that subject themselves to higher and higher doses of meds they wish they didn't need, because the alternative of ever having to set foot in a mental ward again is so horrendous that playing it safe and accepting a lifelong illness seems preferable. The level of incompetence in acute mental health services is so high that you could be forgiven for mistaking it for conspiracy. You could be forgiven for wondering if they do not wish you to get well because your illness funds their existence. You could be forgiven for wondering if it is part of a bigger ploy to keep the populace depressed and suppress an uprising that otherwise would have happened years ago. You could be forgiven for thinking it, but you must not, because that way madness lies. To think such a thing would surely be a sign of illness. And yet I do think these things from time to time, when the services tell me that I am fine. They tell me that I am not delusional when I talk about gods and angels, and yet chastise me when I talk about positive social interactions and a party night out. At every rave I attend, half the people I meet work in mental health. Yet while they are out there partying off their tits for their own mental health, by day they tell people who have actually been through something that sobriety is the only route to happiness. I once had a care coordinator tell me that it was okay for her to drink a bottle of wine of an evening because she was not ill. Surely, if you are not ill, there is less need for the numbing effect of alcohol than if you are. I do not care what you do, as long as you are not hurting others while you do it, and as long as you afford others the same liberties that you give yourself. We say that the services are overstretched, but they are only overstretched because they are not allowing people to not need them. There is a point at which it becomes monitoring and not care. When the interventions that they say are designed to help just layer you with stress and confusion, where you become fearful of law enforcement officers because should anything happen to you, it is you who will be punished and locked up with no questions and no chance to give your side of the story. In November 22, I was experiencing an extreme religious experience. I was hit over the head with a hammer 3 times by a gentleman who was understandably upset that I was trying to kick his door down. But rather than call the police, he attacked me. In the ambulance, they sectioned me, something which usually upset me because there was no need. I knew I needed to be in hospital. I had tried to get myself committed a few days earlier. I wanted to be in hospital. The police did not even question the perpetrator. His house was a few meters from where I was standing, yet they did not question him or get access to the bloody hammer that would have been evidence. And no one has ever properly discussed with me what happened that day, something that allowed my nefarious neighbours to gaslight me about it for a year. In the past, I have been escorted home by police from a hotel for I do not know what. I have been pinned to the ground by festival security. I have found myself in mental wards twice after people have made credible attempts on my life, and several times when nothing more than family upset has occurred. If I committed a crime while psychotic, charge me with a crime. and give me a chance to explain myself. When you are diagnosed with a serious mental health illness, any emotion, any situation seems to be treated as a consequence of you poorly managing your illness and not a reaction to how people are treating you. Surely, if someone has a condition and is classed as vulnerable, then crimes against them should be taken more seriously, not less. If you have a mental instability, you are likely to overreact to minor provocations, part and parcel of a diagnosed condition. The focuses of the services should be to gently soothe those fears, to listen to you rant, to provide company when you are scared without judgment. Instead, if you show any fear to the services, they respond with talk of wards and halfway houses. I know I should have been in a mental ward a few weeks ago. Something serious happened, and for a while I was not sure that I was safe on my own. But you see, the problem with going to a ward is that they may not let you back out. And it causes everything to reset. Because your health is judged on the time since you were last in a ward. Your ability to drive is taken away from you. Your insurance goes up for every insurance form asked when you were last in hospital. It feels like needing help is repaid with punishment. So don't tell me that you're helping when your help is nothing thus. When your help is only punishment. No place to lay my trust. And don't tell me that you're helping when you can't do the simplest thing. If you will not get me my laptop, maybe some nice long string. And don't tell me that you're helping when you're watching your own back. Well, mine is all red raw and bleeding and my heart's set to crack. And don't tell me you don't see them. The hopeless, disenchanted mass. The ones that no more struggle just lie upon the grass. And don't tell me you can't see it. The constant pain behind their eyes. The sparkles with a gleam like raindrops when someone stops, says hi. So do not make me say, if you will not accept my words, just let me lick my wounds in peace and somehow make it through at least. And don't tell me that you're helping, when your help is nothing thus. When your help is only punishment, no place to lay my trust. Am I batshit insane? Or maybe the one true voice of reason left? The world is dying. The mental health services are driving some people to suicide and drug addiction. They have me. And while they are doing their best to be supportive now, it should never have got to this state. It is far harder to recover from a dependency than never to have had one in the first place. I need the world to know that no, I am not okay, but I am on the right path. I am a gentle person who believes in friendship and the curative power of love and sex. I just want to sit quietly and write with my pain and my friends and process it whilst holding down a job. I want to write you books of stories beyond your wildest dreams. I want to unite the cis and trans communities. I want. But instead, I am made to talk and talk and talk. And it stresses my anxiety so badly that I can't think. In gods and angels, it makes me so that I am incapable of being out in public and equally worried when I am on my own. I was barely able to write this show and certainly not memorize the script. My experiences within my own head, though, have given me an encyclopedic knowledge of mental health. I knew I was mentally ill since I was 12 years old. I did everything in my power to mentally fix myself. At 35, I thought I had achieved that goal. I felt calm and content. The dark internal thoughts were gone. I was happy and at the peak of my career, and they sectioned me. I would not wish my life since that day on my worst enemy. But if I could live this life again, I wouldn't change a single thing. And maybe dream I had more balls, fought more battles, climbed more walls, and maybe have a tat or two, or dreads, or funky tartan shoes, and maybe pierce my nose or lip, or ride an awesome acid trip, or leave the real world behind and find myself in Kazakhstan. But if that was then and this is now, the who, the what, the when, the how, I wouldn't be the girl I am. The girl that thinks she is a man. The girl who through the darkest day has family and friends who stay. The girl who wallows in the night and in the day picks up the fight. The girl whose love is pure and true, who hopes that she will thrive for you. And so I ask you, am I ill or am I well? Because I sure as hell can't be both. Thank you.